Hello and welcome, I am Arumba, thank you for joining me. Let's play some Distant Worlds 2. This is a space-based 4X game that came out in 2022. I had the privilege of playing it before the game was actually officially released, and since it's come out, I've played about 200 hours, and this is going to be a playthrough. I'm not going to call it a tutorial, but it's going to be like a guided playthrough. I'm going to try to maybe somewhat of an over-explain on my decisions and help people to understand how the game's core mechanic works. The core mechanics, if you are new to the game and want to get into it. At this point, I play on almost, not all, but I've tried all of the manual automation settings. I've kind of tinkered with every facet of the game. And I'm to the point now where I always play with the hardest difficulty that I can, just to keep the challenge up and actually, put a little bit of pressure on me. So let's see how we do. We're going to do a standard spiral with only 700 stars. I do like to keep nebula density quite low because nebulas can cause pathfinding issues right now. So until that issue gets fixed in patch 1.0.3.3, I just prefer to keep them down. So what'll happen is your ships can end up getting in these really circuitous routes, and they don't really add too much to the gameplay as far as I'm concerned. We'll play with a smaller galaxy size just so that we can actually experience more of the overall game in a shorter period of time. But I do highly recommend playing on large sectors with many stars, and yeah, I think the game is best played with a big, huge map because it increases the distance between stars, which then makes hyperdrive tech and fuel cell tech more relevant. But for our purposes, let's just play with a small sector size so that we can get right into it and, meet our neighbors quickly. We're going to put starting galaxy expansion at starting. So what this means is that if I don't specify for individual AIs, they will start with more tech than I will. They will start with level 0. In this game, that means that they get the first full column of research. We will start with pre-warp, which means we don't even have a warp engine at the start. Galaxy aggression will be on Chaos, difficulty extreme, very slow research speed. I highly recommend this if you do manual retrofitting of your ships, because if you play on normal or even faster researches, you tend to knock out so much tech that you're just basically spending all of your time redoing your ship design, which is a very fun game. Some people would even say that that's the main game and that everything else is the mini game, but I like playing on very slow research speed so that my decisions feel impactful. Research visibility, only next project's visible. It's fine to play with either of these. There were some performance issues having all projects visible on release, but that has largely been fixed. I'm still going to just keep it on only next project to keep the research screen from being overwhelming. Fixed research paths. This is a way of diversifying your experience. So if you want, you can change the way that the research paths and connections are made just to make each game different. For this playthrough, let's just use fixed. Tech trading, I always leave on off because it is busted. All you have to really do with it on is steal tech from one AI and then sell it to every other AI and take all their tech and then sell all that tech to all the other AI, and then suddenly the game's just over. So this does not disable tech stealing or tech salvaging, it just disables the ability to sell tech to other AIs. Pirates, I've played on the highest settings that I can before. I think that very many is actually punishing more for the AI than it is for the player. It harms some of the starter AIs. The races just can't handle having too many pirates, and it just puts them further behind. I found many with very strong and average distance to be pretty acceptable. It's a good challenge for the player, while not completely destroying the AI starts. I do like pirates to stay dead because if you put them on respawn, they will constantly spam you for the entire game asking you to pay them. Space creatures on very many just makes it a little bit more challenging to move into new star systems. Got more Gravelics and other space critters, Artilises to kill, and it's fine. Also, I believe having it above normal will cause them to also migrate, so there will be a large number of creatures around certain star types, and then they'll actually wander around, which can cause some challenge and some fun. I do like having colony prevalence on very rare, independent colonies on very rare. I don't like how sometimes when you put this on normal or even higher than normal, certain countries or nations will have a whole bunch of adjacent independent colonies and just get, the luck of the draw. And it kind of takes away from the accomplishment of the playthrough in my experience. Like, Did you make good decisions, or did you just get a lucky start with lots of independent colonies? That can still happen with very rare independent colonies, but it just makes it so that they're few and far between. Let's face it, there's not that many places in the universe that life can live. I don't think it makes much sense for there to be a whole bunch of easily colonizable planets without reasonable technology. These settings are up from the default, which is this. I like having a little bit more influence range just so that your projected space has nicer borders. And I do like having slightly larger colonization range limit. All of this is really more relevant on the 10 by 10 sector map. So for now, actually, we'll bump that back down to 200 million. Because it just is, it just makes sense to me. We're going to place human. Why not? You know? So humans, in case you don't know, are tall, largely hairless, bipedal mammals. I love the fact that somebody took the time to actually write out a description of what humans are. Kind of cracks me up. We have some personality modifiers. These only apply to AIs, but the one that we do care about is reproduction rate. This is I believe, the base multiplier. So we get 6% year over year base reproduction based on funding and happiness and other stuff. But this number is important when you compare it to other races. So we're like top 25%, maybe top 33% in reproductive rate. The fastest reproducing race is Bhaskara with 8%. Second fastest is Tikan with 7%, followed by humans at 6%, Actarians at 6%, and then there's the slowest 3, which are the Mortalans at 5%, the Xenox at 5%, and the Hakanish at 5%. So we're toward the top as far as reproduction rate. We like making babies. I think migration tendency does also affect the players' ops, whether or not they'll try to migrate to other planets. I'm not certain, though. Obviously, we like to live on, planets that are good for humans. We get a 5% bonus to all research, 10% bonus to diplomacy, 10% war weariness reduction, 10% bonus to espionage, and 5% bonus to trade income. We start off with certain negative attitudes toward other races. There's the primary races in this list, then also all of the secondary independent races that are not playable, but you will find out in the universe, and yeah. And while we're on this topic of independent races, these bonuses, this is something I didn't learn until I was well over 100 hours into the game. If you have at least 1 billion population of any race that's not your primary race, you get their listed bonuses instantly. So for example, if we get 1 billion Hakanish, then we get their racial bonuses. If we get 1 billion Wekarus, we get their bonuses. So playing as a human diplomatic race with, focus on a federation is potentially very strong because you can stack a lot of racial modifiers. Preferred government it's not a requirement, but these are the 2 governments that are kind of ideal, well suited for our race. These are the ones that are allowed. We're going to play as a republic because republics are busted and the absolute strongest government in the game, hands down, aside from the special government types that you can get later on in the game from random events. Let me just briefly explain why I think that's the case. Mostly because when you play on the highest difficulty setting, there is a somewhat maybe imbalanced penalty to your corruption. Corruption eats away at your revenue, and 20% colony corruption reduction is just the most important thing because you actually have money that way. It may get balanced in the future where on the highest difficulty, corruption isn't quite so penalizing, but while playing on the highest difficulty, I feel like republics are a no-brainer pick, strictly due to this. You compare it to every other government type, this one has no modifier, this one has a penalty increasing your corruption, this one has a penalty increasing corruption, and this one has a penalty increasing corruption. So it's the only one that humans have access to that decreases corruption, which just means it's the best. Everything else is fine. We don't really care. All I really care about in this list is the colony corruption reduction, the pop growth, the all research, and the colony happiness. Colony happiness also plays into pop growth. Colony happiness can also play into tax rate. And the diplomacy plus 10 is also quite fine. War weariness doesn't matter if you don't go to war. Espionage doesn't really matter if you don't care about having your tech stolen. And then ground troops are the least important part of the game, in my opinion. So, great government type. Our home system will be on normal. I have experimented playing with a harsh and trying start. My original expectation for these difficulty settings was that it was just going to reduce the quality of the resources in your starting system. But what it also does is it can just randomly remove resources. So one playthrough, you might not have any polymer. Second playthrough, you might not have any carbonite. Third playthrough, you might not have any of either of them. And it can basically make the game completely unplayable if you get unlucky. And then, say for example, you survey the next closest 15 stars and find no carbonite, which is exactly what happened to me. I do not recommend this. I'd rather just play on normal and then give the other AIs bigger bonuses. That way you're kind of guaranteed to have access to at least the basic construction materials. We'll start on starting expansion, so we just get one colony. We're going to be on pre-warp. Starting location, I mean, we're human, so we want to be diplomatic. It'd be advantageous to start toward the center of the galaxy, but we'll just leave it on random. Luck of the draw. And then I like to program my AIs to be specific levels. As I've gotten better at the game, I like to increase their bonuses. So I'm giving all of the AIs level 0, which again means that they are not pre-warp. They have all of the first column of research, every single tech. This is a huge advantage. It gives them probably about 15 to 20 years worth of research time instantly at the start of the game. And it's going to allow them to bypass a lot of stuff like that. It's going to take us 2 to 4 years just to get the ability to use warp drive. They already have that. So they're going to start scouting faster. They're going to do stuff faster. I also like to give them an agreeable home system, so they have an abundance of starter resources. We've got one of every other race: Akdarian, Boskaran, Hakonish, Tikan, Mortalan, and Xenox. So a lot of times I like to play with 2 of each race, but on this smaller galaxy size, I think 1 of each race that's not us is a good number. As far as victory conditions, I haven't really changed this from the default. I think I bumped this from 70 down to 60. We will play with racial victory conditions, which just means that each race gets extra score toward certain things that's kind of well suited for their race. And we'll go over those at the start of the playthrough. And that all being said, let's get started. Wow, we're already like 13 minutes in, and we haven't even started playing yet. Okay, our faction is known as the United Federation of Planets. I chose that name. Our government is Republic. We are the humans. We're going to head to Earth. I'm going to go ahead and rename our capital to Earth, just because it makes sense to me. Let's see where we are in the universe. Oh, edge start, not great. That's fine. That's fine. Extra challenge, right? Not a lot of close stars. Gonna be a little tricky to, we want to move toward the center so we can meet as many people as possible. So, first things first, I don't want to spend a huge amount of time going over my policy settings, but I do want to just mention once more that I have a highly customized preset that I use through the last 200 hours of playtime. It's basically all set exactly where I want it, and if you have any questions about what any of these things do or what I would recommend, please drop a comment and I will try my best to answer, to explain my decisions. But basically, everything that the AI is good at doing, I let them do it, and if they're bad at doing it, I do it. So I like to do ship design, I like to do colonization, I like to do, in many cases, espionage, diplomacy. I'm in charge of building ships. I decide when they're built, where they're built. I do allow the AI to do retrofits, and I actually do, for the most part, allow the AI to control my fleets. Sometimes I'll step in and take control and do like an individual invasion or clear a specific base or something. But the game's sense of scale and scope just gets so big so fast that I feel like controlling every fleet is just far too much work in a game like this. So, let's go ahead and queue up the first research, which should absolutely, in almost all circumstances, be early warpfield experiments. You do usually start off with half of this automatically complete. If you do start the game and it's not half complete because the game hasn't unpaused yet, for some reason it zooms in, and then as soon as it like zooms far enough into your capital, the game automatically unpauses. And then like within a day or two, it then bumps up your 50% progress. So I've actually had it where I've paused the game before the game's run at all, and then I've started this, not realizing I didn't have 50% complete for free, and then I've crash coursed it, and you end up paying twice as much. So, anyway, okay, where do we begin? Research, crash coursing, in the tooltip. Click to initiate crash program for 3750 credits. It costs 100 credits per size of the research. If you look at the top right corner there, it says size 75, so We have half already, that's why it's 3,750 credits to crash course this. And all that does is double the research speed that you have. So instead of it taking 8.52 years, if we crash course, it'll take half of that, 4.25 years. I'm going to hold off on clicking this for maybe a year or so, because there is a chance that we can get a scientist event that will initiate a crash course for free, and will often give you an extra scientist on top of the normal characters spawn rate. So I don't like to click it right away. I like to wait like 6 months to a year, give it the opportunity for a scientist to spawn, and if it doesn't, then we'll crash course it. So, I think, all that being said, before we dive into the game, I'm actually going to take a break here, just so that we can keep these episodes at a smallish, reasonably digestible size. I apologize, we have only played 4 days, but that is the start of a human campaign in Distant Worlds 2. And I look forward to seeing you guys in the next episode. As always, thank you for watching, and I'll see you soon.